Hello and welcome. It's Ava here with the Candid Cashflow podcast and heyoava.com. I'm including in a little bit of extra stuff with my show notes this week, and part of that is going to be my process for editing my podcast, which is very simple. I've just recorded my intro here, and I record my podcast in parts, so I separate it. It's usually intro, sponsor, overview, and then the body of the podcast, and then my conclusion. Sometimes the body might be in multiple parts just because it's easier to edit than one big long thing. So this is just the intro segment, and you can see it's very short, less than 9 seconds long. And each segment, these are the two effects that I apply. So first I select an area like this where there's no talking. Click Effect. I'm in Audacity. I click Effect, go down to Noise Reduction, Get Noise Profile. Then I click the thing so the entire clip is selected. Back to Effect, and I click Repeat Noise Reduction. And what that does is apply that to the entire clip. Then I go in and I remove, you can see there's going to be a mouse click here at the end. And I'm going to remove this little bit of extra here at the beginning. I leave a little bit on the front and end of my clip just so there is a pause between it and whatever's happening next. You'll see before the end of this video how I put all of the clips together. But I do leave that little bit. You can see like it's way under 1 second. So here's your 1 second mark right here. You can see it's well under that, so it's nothing too extraordinary. Okay, the second effect that I apply to each clip is select the entire thing, go to Effect, click the compressor, and because I don't know what any of this stuff means, I just leave it the defaults and click OK, and it applies that. You can see how the levels jump there. It applies that to the clip. And what the compressor does is it levels out the levels of my voice so that everything sounds loud and clear and professional. So very non-technical. I'm not a sound engineer. I'm just somebody that decided to do podcasting, and so I go about it in a very simple way. If I decide to expand in the future into the podcasting medium more deeply, then I'll probably expand my knowledge as well. But for right now, this works well. So those are the two effects that I apply to each clip. And then once I have all of my clips together and edited down, I also go ahead and listen to them and edit them down. So I edit out any or parts where I messed up, because I keep recording. Like if I mess up a sentence, I keep recording. I just insert a couple pauses and read that part over or whatever. So so I edit as I go along, so once I put everything together, it's not such a long process where I'm editing down 20 minutes of dialogue or whatever. So that's that for this segment. Okay, and we're back. I'm ready to edit my entire podcast. So I have all my files here. No, we're not on episode 9, we're on episode 10, and I'll try to talk you through as I go through it. All of these files, it's going to be these right here, these 5 files here of my intro, overview, sponsor, body of the podcast, and then the conclusion. And I as I mentioned earlier, I do my podcast in parts because it's just easier to edit a shorter piece of audio than to do this whole thing, which is probably in total about 20 minutes. So each file is already edited down. I've taken out any and I've applied the two effects that I use, which are the noise reduction and compressor. Again, you saw that earlier in the video. So let's get started. So what I do is I drag over my intro first into Audacity, and these are MP3 files. that that I've exported. I recorded in Audacity and then exported it out. So the intro. And I want to stretch this over. It's just easier to work with if it's... Okay, so this is going to be the intro where I say hello and welcome, blah, blah, blah.
Hello and welcome.
Okay, so now I grab my music. And this is the reason that I don't wait and apply my effects to the entire podcast, because my music is already mixed, so I don't want to mess with that. So as opposed to applying those effects to the entire thing, I just do it to my voice. Alright, so I want the music to be after my intro, so I just drag this till I see the yellow line, and that results in this.
Eva fails.
Okay, and so I'm just going to minimize those two in here and move on. So the next section is going to be the sponsor. So I'm going to drag that over. And I'm using the time shift tool to just so I can drag everything to where I need it to be. And I like the sponsor part to start right as the music is tapering off. So let's see if that's a good spot there.
This episode is sponsored by Blueberry. Blueberry boasts the largest podcast directory in the world with...
Okay, that'll work. Could probably even slide it over a little bit more.
This episode is sponsored by Blueberry.
She kind of sounds like she's yelling over the... Alright, so next section after sponsor is going to be the overview. And let's drag that to the end. And I just play the last little bit just to make sure, you know, there's a gap and everything sounds good, transitions well, etc. So
has to offer. I can't believe this is just the 10th episode.
Okay. And this is, I mean, it takes me like 5 minutes to throw this together because everything is already edited, so. Alright, so after overview, we have the body, which is usually the big part where I went the longest blabbing without stopping. So I think my first episode, like I actually did, where I just recorded the whole thing, and what ended up happening was I ended up having to start over a lot. So
Buy Amazon wishlist and take a born, and what an adventure it's been. Following Pat Flynn's tutorial, I decided on
okay, good. After the body, it's going to be the conclusion. Okay, and after the conclusion, I go back out here and add my outro music. Done with this. And as with the sponsor, I like this to overlap a little bit, so right in there should be good. Let's see.
Site at heyoava.com. Until next time, turning your passion into cash flow.
Perfect. Alright, and shrink up these two. So that's pretty much that's my editing process. So I record each one of these sections separately. I apply my 2 effects, and then I come in once I have all of my files completed and put them together just like this. So I'm going to export that as an MP3. And this is just my episode, so click save. Okay. And I go in and put in my information here. My track title is State of the Podcast. Starting a podcast in 2018. Album title is the Candid Cashflow podcast. I know they say, like, I think even in Pat Flynn's tutorial, he says not to tag your file in Audacity, but I think that might have changed along with a couple of the other things. For example, he was doing like a roundabout upload your, have Audacity export your file as a WAV file and then uploading it to iTunes and then like downloading the MP3 from there and doing your tags in iTunes, because something about the quality of the MP3 from Audacity, but I think that's changed because I've looked up, you can see this takes a couple minutes to export. I've looked it up, and just from the small, really small body of research that I pulled, didn't really corroborate that whole process. And like I said in my podcast this week, I don't necessarily sit around and contemplate, oh, how can I make this sound better, because it sounds so good to me as a novice that like I don't want to get too complicated with that type of stuff. Like if I decide to do more shows or obviously keep going with this show, then expanding my knowledge is probably going to be something I want to do in the future, but I'm just not to that point yet. So the files coming out of Audacity sound great to me. They upload everywhere. They sound good. I haven't had any, well, I've had pretty much zero feedback, but I haven't had anybody say, you know, you could make this sound better if you did ABC. So alright, so that's exported, and then I also saved the project, just because, in case I want to come back at some point and edit any of these tracks here, I'm able to do that. So I just go ahead and save the project as well. And that's pretty much it. Like, I'm ready to upload right now. Now my podcast, it doesn't release until tomorrow, so I won't, but I'm ready to go now. So you can see the process by doing the clips separately. The editing process is really short because all I have to do is add them in here. So that's that. I'm gonna close out the video because obviously all I have to do from here is wait for this to finish. I hope this helped you out if podcasting is something that you're interested in doing, that you see how simple the process is. Have a great week, and I'll be back with the Candid Cashflow podcast. I have an episode 10 coming out tomorrow, and then I'll see you next week with episode 11, where I'll be discussing 29 plus. I haven't decided on the exact number. I have a list so far of 29 ways to make money online, and that's coming out next week. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Until then, turning your passion into cash flow.